It is solstice today. It's a very bright, sunny day, very hot too. The sun this morning rose into an absolutely beautifully clear blue sky, which, as you can see behind me, is still there. Most unusual for the island, and for the first time for a long time that I've seen a solstice sun rise into a blue sky. I'm sitting here next to what I call the Jade Pool, which is the harbour. And on a day like this, when the sun is bright and shiny and there's no wind, the pool, the water in there, has a shade of jade, which is just totally beautiful. And this morning I was reading, after I watched the sunrise, an email that came in, because I'm on a subscription list, a mailing list, from somebody I follow, who I don't know. His name is Robin Harford. He's a forager. He's quite well known. He's written a few books. He has a website called eatweeds.co.uk. I shall post a link at the bottom of this video. And I've been following his work for quite some time. I have his books. And in the past months, he seems to be doing something really special, really holistic with foraging and plants and nature, and not just looking at the outside or the fact of foraging. He can explain it better than I can, so follow the link. But he was explaining this morning in the email about the sun and our relationship to it, and how that sun feeds and gives life to the world, but can also destroy. And I have to say that today it's an extremely hot sun. I've never known the heat so hot here on the island on a day like this. And it reminds me of a story. So 2 stories in 2 or 3 days is quite something. The reason I'm telling this story will become obvious, because it's solstice and this story fits. And it begins long ago, once, not twice, not thrice, in the times in the world before human beings came here and started wandering around and thereby knocking the balance of nature out. And in those days, the things in the world, the 10,000 things, were the responsibility of the animals. So everything was kept into balance. When I say the things, I mean, for example, the blackbird and her mate. They were responsible for the bugs, the beetles, and the insects on the ground under the leaves. And they would spend their days scrimmaging and scrummaging around, looking for bugs, never taking too many and leaving some so that the next year there would be more. The wren, his responsibility was to keep the forest floor clean and tidy, which was quite a task, I can imagine, when the blackbird and her mate were wandering around throwing leaves in the air and all over the place. The tops of the trees, they were the responsibility of the goldcrest, and the goldcrest would fly around chatting to all the other birds in its very unique sort of way, and keeping the tops of the trees clean and tidy. The swallows, the swifts and the house martins, their responsibility was to accompany the winds and to make sure that the winds went in the right direction. Well, at least that's what the swallows and the martins and the swifts thought. The wind had other ideas about that. The seas and the oceans, they were entrusted to the gannets and the gulls. And the gannets and the albatrosses would fly around, making sure that the sea was under their control. The terns, who didn't get that particular job, have been complaining about it ever since, and still do to this very day. Darkness was entrusted to the owl. And the owl made a very good job of looking after the darkness. He would stay awake all night long, watching the darkness. And light was entrusted to the gull. The gull took his job very seriously, and he would keep the light, and when it was time, he would let the light out, and when it was time to take the light in, he would take the light in. And he lived in a crevasse, a small cave on the cliffside above the sea. And in there, he kept the light. But as the years went by, the gull got more and more jealous of other people, other birds, other creatures, seeing the light. So he kept it to himself. He became very possessive of the light, and he put it in a sack and put it in the back of his little cave on the side of the cliff, and he wouldn't let anybody else see it. The birds, of course, without their daylight, weren't happy about this. Oh, the wren particularly was unhappy, because the wren couldn't see to keep the forest floor clean, and the blackbird and her mate, they had no light when they could go foraging. So it was that all the birds gathered together one day to discuss what to do with the gull and the gull's propensity to keep the light to itself. They had discussions. And it was the wren that came up with a very clever idea. But he needed help. So he asked the goldcrest if the goldcrest would help him, because the wren was not so happy about flying quite so high. The goldcrest, on the other hand, as you would know from another story that I have told, was very happy to fly very high. In fact, the goldcrest was famous for having flown very high. That's another story. And so it was that the wren took the goldcrest off into a darker part of the wood and explained to him his plan. And this is what they did. The wren broke off a thorn from a whitethorn bush. He took the thorn in his beak and he flew up to the crevasse where he was not happy to be, and he snuck into the crevice where he found the gull, who was sitting there quite quietly, as if in meditation. Deep in the crevasse behind was the light. If you can hear some noise, some thumping, I can tell you that in Peenemünde, which is across the bay, it's Stadtfest. So there's kermis and there's all noise and things, which is why I'm happy to be here. I've been there once, not nice. Back to the wren. The wren took out his tiny little hawthorn thorn and he jabbed it into the belly of the gull, who screamed in pain, but couldn't remove this little whitethorn thorn. At that point, the wren looked at him and said, "Oh, look, you have a whitethorn thorn stuck into your side. Let me be of help. Let me pull it out for you." And the gull, of course, in pain, said, "Please do." But here is where the wren was clever. Oh, wrens are clever. And the wren said, "Yes, my friend, but it's too dark. I can't see. Would you shed some light on the matter so I can see how to pull it out?" And the gull, in pain, reached back to the sack in the back of his little crevice, and he opened up the opening just a little bit so a bit of light came out. At that point, the wren pushed the thorn deeper in, and the gull screamed again. Oh, please, take it out." "But I cannot see," said the wren. "Open up the sack a little bit more." So that's what he did. He opened up the sack a little bit more. And then the wren called out to the goldcrest and said, "Goldcrest, be quick, steal the light." The goldcrest, who was outside flying around, heard his friend the wren, came flying down into the cave, could see where the light was, stuck its head into the sack, pulled out the light with its beak, and poof, was gone. The wren, being not an unfair creature, pulled the thorn out and flew off too, following his friend and the light. And so it was that the wren and the goldcrest saved the day. The gull from that day on, and all of his ancestors after that, spent their entire days complaining and screeching and screaming at the world for the loss of the light. The wren took himself back down into the forest. He wasn't one for the limelight, and there he hid. And the goldcrest? Well, if ever you see him, you'll know, because as he dipped his head into the sack where the light was, some of that light rubbed off from the crown of his head. And still to this very day, the goldcrest and all his ancestors, male and female, have a slight yellow light streak on their heads. which is fitting for a bird whose Latin name is Regulus, Regulus. The goldcrest is not just a king once, he's a king twice. And that's the end of the story, here next to the jade pool on the island of Rüden on solstice. And don't forget to follow the link to find Robin Harford. This is a man who needs a little bit of support. Well, he doesn't need support, but it'd be really good to give him support because the work he's doing is fabulous, as was the work that the goldcrest did and the wren. Thank you, my dears, for watching and for listening. That's the end of this story. It will be a few weeks before the next one.